Welcome back to Dyknow's Tech Coach Corner YouTube series. I'm Tiara Lustig, your host, and today we have a great conversation with Chris Woods from the Daily STEM, talking about how teachers can create effective videos to use for instruction, whether it's in a remote learning environment, a flipped learning environment, blended learning, or in the traditional classroom. So before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind everyone to please subscribe to Dyknow's YouTube channel and turn on post notifications so that you're getting notified when we drop new videos, as well as go ahead and follow Dyknow on all of our social channels so you never miss a thing. I think that's all that I have to plug today, so without further ado, we'll jump into our conversation with Chris Woods. Welcome back to Tech Coach Corner, everyone. I'm Tiara, your host today, and I am joined by Chris Woods for this episode. Chris, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself before we jump in?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on the show, Tiara. I'm a high school math teacher, and I live in Michigan. And mainly, even though I teach math, I love sharing ideas, especially with my kids, but also with educators out there through social media and through my website at Daily STEM is the social media, and dailystem.com. And mainly, it's just all about trying to share great ideas, because that's what every educator out there needs.
Yeah, we love some good ideas and new ideas, especially during this time of remote learning and kind of quarantine and all of that. I think it's provided a big kind of surge of innovation and new ideas and kind of creating new ways to teach. And I think that really aligns with what we're here to talk about today. One thing you've talked about with us in the past is creating effective videos for teachers to use for instruction with students during remote learning. I think it's super applicable as we're going back to this classroom in fall 2020. We don't really know what that's going to look like. It could be remote learning, it could be blended learning, it could be, back to traditional learning. So what tips do you have for teachers to create videos for students, whether it's in a remote learning, blended learning, or a traditional environment?
Yeah, great question, Tiara, because I think a lot of educators out there have been thrown into the deep end and trying to swim, and that's where we're really at. I think that if we had started digital online learning right from the start of a school year, I think we would have failed miserably. But I think because it happened, thankfully towards the end of a school year for a lot of parts of the world, that it was a little bit easier transition because we already knew those students. So we had some familiarity with them. But yeah, even still with that, it's still tough to try to figure out how do you make something that connects with your students. So I try to keep it simple. And in fact, that's probably my number one idea. Keep it simple, keep it short. Kids are living in a world where they scroll through videos and if they don't get excited in the first 5-10 seconds of a video, they're going to turn it off. So that doesn't mean that we have to have like things all flashing and stuff behind us and in a fancy costume or anything. I mean, the kids should still understand that this is part of their education and they have to take that ownership, that responsibility. But we do have to do our best at trying to create something that really engages those kids. So number one, like I said, keep it simple and keep it short. All of my math, so I teach math. I teach high school math, and math can be very boring, especially a lot of people probably feel that from their growing up days. So my videos are all 1 minute to 2 minutes at the most. Maybe I only do one example problem. Maybe I just do 2 example problems, but I keep it that short limit so that kids can watch it and it can be done, and then they can process that thought. They can go on to the next thought. And some subjects are going to lend themselves better to that than others. But I've just found that if you have like 4 or 5 or 3 or 2, however many short videos, that's often better than one longer 10-15 minute video that maybe kids drone on and start to daze out. But the other big thing that I would highly encourage is have your voice or have yourself in that video, and don't worry about if you feel like I don't feel comfortable in front of a screen, so just set up your camera, like grab your phone and have it like propped on something and do the writing underneath. But at least they see your hands and they hear your voice explaining something. Just put some white paper on the table and prop your phone up high and hit record. And then use that, or set your phone up and do it against if you got a small whiteboard, if you got some paper, or go into your classroom because nobody's there and use the whiteboard in there. But if they see you, if they hear your voice, you're going to start to make that connection with them. And it's not just some random information. We always try to talk about that personal communication, that relationship with kids. And that's such an important thing, especially in video.
Definitely. And I think that emotional connection and physical connection that we've lost during remote learning can really be compensated for with those videos, and making sure your voice and your face, if you're comfortable with that, are in the video to keep that connection with students. Chris, I know you have some awesome resources and a great network for STEM out there. Can you share with everyone where they can find you and further connect with you?
Yeah, and especially if they have more questions, I'm always happy to help answer questions. They can go to dailystem.com, where I've got plenty of free resources, ideas, simple things that you can ask your kids or share with your kids or share with your kids' families to get them doing STEM together. And they aren't just all STEM things. It's not just building a rocket. It's, hey, go for a walk in the park and see how many different types of leaves or animals you see, or how many blue cars, red cars, yellow cars go by your house while you sit on the front porch and eat a popsicle for 2 hours or something. I mean, there's simple things that you can do like that every day with your kids. So a bunch of those resources are on my webpage at dailystem.com by clicking on the resources tab. Or I'm on social media at Daily STEM on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter mostly, but the others as well. And again, if you got a question, find somebody, ask somebody. We're teachers. We're all in this together. We're always willing to help each other out.
Definitely. And I know we talked about social media, but the hashtag STEM on social media is really, really helpful, as well as remote learning hashtag and all those hashtags where people are consistently talking about those topics. So I think that's a great place to get your questions answered, as well as contacting you directly. Well, thank you so much.
It's a frustrating thing that we're having to go through, but I tell you what, it's also an opportunity for these kids to realize that learning doesn't end when we leave these school walls, and learning doesn't end when you're outside the classroom. Learning should always happen everywhere, especially finding ways to add that STEM learning.
Definitely. And I think with your episode of the Tackling Tech podcast, that was kind of one of my favorite parts, is students are now in new learning environments, which promotes new learning activities and new ways that they wouldn't even think to find STEM or, different topics in their daily lives, which I think is so important, in getting parents involved in that and just creating kind of this whole learning environment in a holistic sense, rather than just seeing STEM in a classroom or in a STEM lab.
Exactly, Tiara. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Chris. It's great always to learn from you about STEM, and we can't wait to engage with you further.
All right. I appreciate it. I'm always happy to help.